Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trek Before. This time, Deep Space Nine, playing God. Playing God on It's All Been Trek Before. We're not going to play God, but you can. Become a Patreon member. You'll feel not like God, but like a godlike creature. You'll be like a godlike creature to us. It's very inexpensive. Get all the bonus material. You support us. You support the network, including the mothership, IABD, Radio Hour. And you get some cool stuff. Lots of cool, I think they still call it swag. In the meantime, swag with us as we talk Deep Space Nine, playing God on It's All Been Trek Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trek Before. Your skeleton crew is here. This is Steven. Jimmy-Jerome. We're talking Deep Space Nine, playing God. First impressions, besides the fact that the title is sacrilegious, and as devout Christians us both, we are quite offended by it.
Yeah. I don't even say that word. I just say the G word. My first impression beyond that, early on, I really wanted to like it a lot more than I think I ended up. And part of that for sure involves Dax just being in a towel. Because I thought it was going to be an episode where like, oh, we get to see the fun Dax. And then it turned into like, well, here's a little more about the Trill, how the symbiont and the host works, and turned into more of a not master servant, master apprentice kind of a thing there, which it wasn't necessarily bad, just wasn't as interesting to me. And then the proto story, the proto civilization, I thought in my mind it came out of nowhere, but I kind of like that part of it. So if there's three stories there, I love seeing Dax, off-duty Dax, on-duty Dax, not terrible, and there were some good moments because it's Dax and it's Terry Farrell. And then at first I thought the proto civilization, I was like, what are they talking about? What is this nonsense? But then I really liked what they did with it. I thought there were some really good conversations. Other than I thought they made Kira like, okay, you get to be the one who thinks this is a terrible idea this episode. And it didn't feel right to me. But I mean, I know she's definitely like, just take care of stuff. But I thought she was written too over the top for this episode, for that specific thing. So yeah, we'll see where I end up landing overall, but yeah, an interesting mix. And then we throw in, we'll get to it later, that we throw in the scene with Jake. We'll get into that later.
Yeah, I do think it was the best Dax-centric episode they've done so far, but that's not a high bar to clear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like saying it's the best Crusher episode of the Next Gen.
Yeah.
Because she's yet to have a good episode.
Mm-hmm.
I did think the proto universe was unnecessary. I think I would have rather them not force in a emergency and just go with character story. But on the other hand, if they're going to do it, I don't think it was a bad emergency. Mm-hmm. And there were a lot of great moments in this episode. I certainly enjoyed it more than last week's episode of The Next Generation. So
yeah,
we'll get to that as we go, I'm sure. But we get this guy coming on the station, and we find out that Dax breaks initiates. She's known as the initiate breaker. Well, she isn't. Curzon is, right? But she says it's for the last 200 years, so it wasn't just Curzon. It was a host or hosts before Curzon as well.
Right.
Even though they don't get into the details on that. We only get into the details on Curzon.
Yes.
Jadzia is found in Quarks. I felt like it was a little bit cruel for her to give away Quark's tell to the rest of the gathered Ferengi.
Yeah.
But she's like, I can tell how you're lying.
Well, and I thought the character that our guy Cisco knew for so long came through there, that guy in that part and grabbing his ear, which I was like, that's dirty. And then
and Quark's line about don't grab my ear unless you're serious.
Yes.
Love that.
And then at the very end, he yells at her, female.
Well, you can see Dax's playful nature because first of all, she gives away Quark's tell, as we said.
Mm-hmm.
But then she is like, oh, you've never played to Arjun? Just play with us. Like, she's setting up a victim for the Ferengi to take total advantage of. And he's like, I'm tired. She's like, are you tired? Okay, let's go to your quarters. So part of me was like, did she really just set the victim? Because I could see her being that kind of ornery. But at the same time, the fact that she then got him out of the situation was like, is she just teasing the Ferengi and not ever going to actually let him be a victim?
Right. Yeah, which I love whenever Dax is in that mode. And I wrote this later. It makes for an interesting dichotomy. And I think if there's a character that should be dichotomous, it's a Trill, because she's very Spockish a lot of the times, but then the other half, she's this very fun person that's just like whatever, anything goes, which I love, and not in a reckless way, just in a fun way. So
The very next scene after that, where she comes out of the shower in a towel and her
Mhm.
lover's there. Love that too,
Yeah.
because that tells you. I mean, we've heard about her finding Morn attractive and stuff, but to
Mhm.
have this scene of her in the towel and the hookup and everything just really sells home what she does in her free time, and that she really is this free spirit that goes out and has fun and doesn't care what other people think. I like
Yeah.
it a lot.
I mean, obviously Terry Farrell in a towel is going to be intriguing, but
Sure.
the other elements there were much more interesting, like you said, because like at first I was like, is this guy just guarding? And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, no, of course he's not guarding. He's hanging out. He was there. He's been there for a while.
He was pretty friendly about it. Like he wasn't.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
she
yeah.
obviously is not in a monogamous thing. She's just hanging out and having fun.
Well, and the Arjun character was so like, and she even gives some crap about how not meek's not the word she uses, but he's just like, well, I don't know what I want to do, and I'm doing this because of this. And the actor, I looked up his name. He was in everything. I feel like in the '90s, so he looked, and I find him enjoyable. I came around on the character, but yeah,
Talking about Trudjork, played by Chris Nelson Norris.
Arjun. Sorry, Arjun.
Oh, Arjun. Yeah, we haven't talked about Arjun yet. Chris Nelson Norris, I was going to say he doesn't have a lot of credits, but Arjun's played by Jeffrey Blake, who was best known for Forrest Gump, Contact, Godfather of Harlem, Midway, as 118 credits. Most recently, a bunch of movies in 2022. So he's still very, very active.
I think he's one of Jenny's jerky boyfriends in Forrest Gump. I think he's during the anti-war movement. But yeah,
that would have been right about the same time too. Both this episode and Forrest Gump were 94.
Yeah, and he grew on me in the episode, and I think part of it was the idea that he did go through this arc. And it makes sense if you're a young person that's like, well, I don't know what I want to do with my life. That makes sense. I mean, I know when this episode came out, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. But
I mean, I was 11, so I don't think I knew either.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't either. But so he did. He's going to be my annoying person, but I think, and I guess that's the element. It's like, is the idea that he went through this arc because of Dax's training, or is it just she just encouraged him to see that he wasn't a loser or whatever, So, yeah, but yeah,
I get that. So Dax then asks him to get her a black hole from the replicator and it's a Ferengi drink. That's an alcoholic beverage. She just woke up, got out of the shower, is going on duty, and she's drinking alcohol on the job.
okay.
I guess I would assume the replicator probably only makes synthahol rather than alcohol, which means she can shrug it off whenever she wants. But still.
Oh yeah, she does say it's a Ferengi drink. And she said a bartender, and it just went past me. I kept thinking it was like some kind of weird coffee thing, but that makes a lot more sense.
No, black hole is alcohol. But then we do get the line like almost immediately that she hates to be appropriate. I just gotta believe though that it is synthol, so she doesn't have to stay drunk if she doesn't want to. That's the only way I can see that justified.
And this, I mean, I heard the line, and now it just isn't past me. But she said, "Oh, my muscles are sore. Did you ever wrestle Galeo Manada style?" And then she says, what a great coach Trejak is." Doesn't it still sound sexual? Like,
oh, of course.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, given the time of day and everything, and she was even up late with Arjun, and because she was gambling when he found her.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was definitely some sexual activity there.
Yeah.
Of course, Dax hates to be appropriate, as we know.
This is true.
We then get the B plot about the Cardassian voles.
Yeah.
I kind of wish they'd go with another name rather than just giving them like Cardassian and another name we already know. I mean, but they're way bigger and uglier than the voles we're familiar with.
That's what I was gonna say, and I thought they were interesting looking. They look like something out of a vampire movie, which was fine.
They look like a deformed mutant rat monster.
Yeah.
Cisco wants to take them alive, though, which I think they only threw that line in so that later he can be like, kill them, and it impacts. But they tried to do a whole parallel between the proto-universe and the voles that they get into later about, oh, well, it's kind of like if we kill this proto-universe, it could be like us killing the Vols, or we're the Vol. It felt clunky and didn't quite line up for me, but I think that's what the Vols were, was an attempt to draw a parallel between the two stories. And they also took the time for a gratuitous butt shot of Kira and O'Brien buried under the console.
Yeah,
and the camera just stayed on their butts. I mean, that's got to be due to
a line of dialogue about it.
David Livingston, our regular director, took a minute to let the camera linger.
Yeah.
We should mention, because we're talking about the writing and the Vols and the B plot versus A, that it was story by Jim Trabata, teleplay by Jim Trabata, Jose Molina, and Michael Piller. Michael Piller being one of the co-creator of the show. Jim Trabata, which the story does have one Voyager credit and 5 DS9 credits. So this is the first. No, he did an episode in season 1. I'm sorry, and 3 other. This is his last of 5 credits. He had story by for Rivals, The Alternate Paradise this season, and The Forsaken last season, none of which really stand out to me. But there's one episode of Voyager's his final credit on here on IMDb, so he really hasn't worked since then. But then Jose Molina, who helped write this episode with them, has a lot of great credits. He's best known for being a producer on Agent Carter and Terra Nova and Law & Order SVU for 2 seasons, as well as a writer for Firefly. So lots of geek cred for him. But this is his only Trek. He did write 3 episodes of Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, lots of geek stuff. The first 3 episodes of season 4, as a matter of fact. But yeah. I feel like Michael Piller probably brought in Jose to help him fix up Jim's script, but it's still just a little bit.
Yeah.
So we find out Curzon recommended that Jadzia be kicked out of the Initiate program. This is where I got really interested, because if you're going to give us backstory on Curzon and Jadzia and building out that character, I want to hear that. That's I'm all for that plot.
Yes. Yeah.
Quark comes to Ops to complain about the Vol problem and calling them his landlords, which is definitely not quite the relationship I picked.
What I wrote down is like, does that make sense?
No, it does.
Didn't he say one crawled across the table? Doesn't he say something like that?
Yeah. Kira tells Quark just to leave if he's got an issue with things. I feel like that means that some corner has been turned, because Cisco was really trying to get him to stay, and now they just don't care if Quark stays anymore. Well, I guess that makes sense, though, because when we saw them tell Quark to stay, it was very much we're still in a bind. We need to stay so we don't have people fleeing. But now it's like, nope, the station's good now. We're not in danger of losing everybody that lives here. So now we're going to stay. Yeah. Now we're going to not encourage him.
Yeah, I guess attracting people there to go to the casino, people don't want, it's not like the leaders of Deep Space Nine want more people there visiting, right? It's not like they want more tourism.
I mean, I don't think they don't want more tourism, but because Starfleet's not capitalistic, I don't think they care. I think the point of keeping Quark there before was because everybody was leaving and they felt it would become a ghost town. And if they want anybody to stay, civilians and stuff, they needed to maintain some of that.
You don't want
But now that danger's gone, there's enough other tourism and stuff coming in. They don't need Quark. That the station's civilian population will thrive with or without his casino.
You don't want it to be like an empty mall to use that.
Right. But now they have other shops, such as our wonderful Klingon eating establishment that gave us the second and unfortunately final appearance of Ron Taylor as the Klingon chef playing his accordion. Oh my God, that was so good. Why did they only let him do 2 episodes? Why did they not bring him back?
Doesn't make sense.
I mean, that's getting slightly ahead, because we still had before that O'Brien hurting Quark by showing him the Sonic thing, which I thought was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, that was funny.
And then we found out about the subspace seaweed. But then the Klingon chef loved him. I loved him telling Arjun that Dax is his. I love Dax singing along and finding out that Dax is the one that taught him this song. Like, it just fills in all that Dax story. Like I said, in 2 weeks, 2 episodes of DS9 in 4 weeks, we're going to get some Dax backstory with Klingons. But she definitely has backstory with Klingons. So she is right in there with the Klingon warriors. Really, a lot of Klingon episodes for the rest of the series. If it's a Klingon episode, expect Dax to be right in the muck.
Yes.
So this is the first of them, but yeah.
I had just one fashion note. Or maybe there's nope. That's my own. Here's hairstyle. Does that? I can't decide if that takes preparation or not. It's like a fade, right? It looks like a fade. It's not. I mean, it's obviously she's not African American, but
Is that a little different than season 1?
I think so. And, I was looking online, and there's lots of retrospectives on all her hairstyles through it, and it looks like her hair improves.
I definitely prefer the later seasons where her hair gets a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, I love Nana Visitor regardless, but
she's phenomenal in this show.
yeah. And also going back just a little bit, Arjun telling Dak about, well, I know about this about you and this about you, and she said you've been studying up on me, and we've had this. I feel like happen more and more as we get through the theory, that people are like, oh, I know about you, blah 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 blah, and we've talked about like, oh, it makes sense, Kirk or Spock or whatever, but is there a space Google to look people up?
I don't think there's a space Google, but what we find out in this episode, if not before, is that the vast majority of Trills don't get to be joined, and being joined is like a thing they look up to. So I kind of feel like the joined Trills are almost a celebrity in their society. And for somebody that's like Dax, who's on like her 9th host, and Curzon being as prominent as he was, I could see her being somebody that they could look up.
That makes sense.
I think Dax would be relatively infamous among the segment of her own people that are interested in joining. Maybe not the wider universe, although Curzon Dax as an ambassador had a wider reputation. Like, I feel like he was, based on what they say about him, he was at the level of like a Sarek in terms of notoriety.
Yeah.
But his notoriety was between the TOS films and the Next Gen. So that's why we didn't hear about him or see his exploits. Dax says that he must be strong enough to balance the symbiote. We'll talk about pin in that, I guess, until we get to Discovery and their Trill and what it really takes to balance the symbiote. But
yeah,
I really liked the Bashir. I don't know if he was even in this episode, but we had the line where he sent O'Brien something to help with the Volprom, and it's a flute. I loved that. Yeah. So funny. Yeah. What a great little bit.
I thought he popped in this week, but maybe I'm forgetting.
Maybe he does. I don't remember at this point. But certainly I did not have any other notes about him other than this gift, which was great. But I know he didn't deliver it himself.
Oh, he pops in on the proto-universe talk.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
Even though he's not a scientist, but he is a genius. So
yeah, we get a lot of him or Odo this episode. Yeah.
No, they got to take turns. It's a big cast.
Sure.
So Dax says the Trill are arrogant, which I do think is consistent all the way up through Discovery, what we know about that species. So good establishment. I did bump on the fact that Sisko calls Curzon both charming and abusive, because I feel like in our 24th century, the way we
that's a problem.
The abusiveness is what I bumped on. That like, oh, Sisko, we love you. Could you really find somebody that's abusive charming? That's a problem.
Yeah. That's like it sounds like excuse talk.
Yeah, that sounds like covering for Harvey Weinstein.
Well, yes, it does. Yeah, and right before that, Dax is like, my job is to show him what it's like to function as a joined Trill. That's all. I can show you the guidelines. They're very clear. Who am I to confront him? And Sisko says, you're Dax, which I think is a great line. And it reminded me of in Coming to America when James Earl Jones, as Eddie Murphy's father, the king, says to his wife, the queen, says, it's the way it's been for years and years. Who am I to change it? And she's like, I thought you were the king. She's like, who else is going to do it? So this is a little different, but there's a return answer later, which we'll get to then. But I really like that. And just in the sense of this episode, like I said, did they Google him? But you had the great answer. Like, yeah, people know who Dax is. And I think it's great at building up the mythology. Even though, that Curzon stuff is tough.
It is. I mean, Curzon was definitely a flawed person. And
I thought, and I guess that's the counterpoint, but a little bit of the counterpoint. I thought Dax was really hard on him, and that Arjun, and did she help him see the way? Was she just being straight, or I felt like she was a little over the top with him. She was very harsh, but I don't know that she was wrong. But is that
She wasn't wrong, but I think that harshness comes from her. Dax, like she says, there's still part of Curzon in me, and Dax is part of me too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I that's where I thought.
Yeah. And I can't remember if I wrote. Yeah, I did write this down. If it reminded me of, and I'm sure other industries and other every club in the world, or not every club, but many clubs in the world are this way. When I went to law school and, passed the bar and did all that stuff. But it's always like, it's constantly like, well, now you got to do this. Well, why? Because we've always done it. And it's not quite hazing, because that's diminishing how horrible the hazing is. But it's definitely like, well, we had to do this, so you have to do this. So we're going to put you through this terrible experience. It's, well, you got to get the LSAT. And then, well, you got to get through that first year. We're going to try and kick you out, get you kicked, make you quit, essentially. Just like boot camp. And this is very, I don't know if it's all toxic masculinity, but it is very much like, well, you got to be tough and we're going to try and kill you. But at the end of the day, you got to love how much we did to help you. And sometimes that does work out. And, but it still just doesn't feel right. And even when I took the bar, they're like, well, back when the Supreme Court judge that came in he's like, well, back when we did it, it was really hard because da, da, da. I'm like, well, you could, again, this goes back to, well, who am I to change it? It's like, dude, you're the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Ohio. You could fix this.
You could change it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they did, to be fair, they did. As much as I do not care for the Supreme Court in this state.
Why?
It was probably
because they take away all of our rights.
It might have been more balanced then. They still weren't making great decisions, but I stayed quiet while he talked because I needed to focus on passing the bar, which I did. But it just reminded me of that thing. It's like, man, and I guess it does make sense, because it's like, it's a big deal, I guess, to be a simian. It is a big deal to be. You gotta want it. You don't. It's like getting a cat or a dog or getting married or adopting. You got to be committed, and I guess it makes sense on some level. And I know he was kind of wishy-washy.
Yeah,
so maybe from that perspective, maybe not he should have been drummed out, but maybe it'd been more interesting if he's like, you know what, maybe I don't want to do this, but I don't know. But maybe he sees Dax and you're like, she's pretty cool. Maybe I do want to be like this. So
yeah, I definitely was conflicted about that whole thing, honestly.
Yeah,
unfortunately. So Cisco at this point now says he'll kill the Vols, which is, it's hard to blame him. Preserving life is one thing, but preserving these creatures that are just tearing up things and are definitely just nuisances is another thing.
Yeah.
Max tells Arjun that he isn't sure she's worthy at this point. Yeah. But so he basically, like, she finally confronts him. It's bad. It's ugly. She tells him he's not worthy. He goes to Quark for sympathy, and Quark actually gives him some. I did not like that Quark kept calling him son. That felt weird and out of character. But they talked about, him talked about sleeping with the boss's sister and rule of acquisition number 112, never have sex with the boss's sister, which is so specific, but is so prevalent that you have to make it a whole rule. The boss's sister specifically. I liked that. But I also was like, Quark is in his own way somehow full here. I thought he was actually we see where he succeeds as a bartender in that moment.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. Giving it to him straight, but not being a jerk about it.
Yeah. So then we find out the seaweeds of the proto-universe, as we mentioned before, and that we don't know if there's life in there and how time runs in there, and so whole civilizations could be developing within the episode. I did think maybe if you're going to risk your whole station and the whole universe to save it, you should at least confirm if there's life in it, instead of just saying hypothetically there might be life there.
Yeah, because then hypothetically there's life everywhere, right?
Yeah. I mean, they let it blow a hole in the side of the station.
Right.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. As a conversation, it was interesting, but as realistically or logistically, it doesn't make some of this stuff didn't make sense.
Yeah, and what I also bumped on too was the expansion of the proto-universe. Like, our proto-universe, as we understand it, is constantly expanding out at a single rate, whereas this one expands out in spurts at timed intervals.
How did they know that?
Yeah, that didn't really make sense to me.
Yeah, I agree. I read that same note.
I did really like Odo's line. Like you said, Odo's barely in this, but his line for character development purposes of "I don't step on ants" was really affecting to me.
Uh-huh.
Just like Odo. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I like his character.
An interesting, quick conversation. And like I said, I thought they made Kira look like, well, kill everything, which is really, I don't think that really is her. She's got this complicated.
Not by season 2, no.
Yeah.
But I think she is harsher than Odo. But yeah, it's just really interesting to be like, I don't even step on ants. Like, I mean, we know he doesn't use guns. We know he's a pacifist, but man, that just, to me, I was like, whoa, I really bumped on that line. I liked it a lot. Jake's scene.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. He gives himself away with the Dabo girl. And he loves the Dabo girl. I have to say, I made mention this to Morgan. Like, Ben Sisko is not only a great commander of the station, but he's also a better parent than anybody I know, including myself. The fact that he starts out that conversation with, like, you're not dating a Dabo girl, which is very judgmental because, people can be Dabo girls for a lot of reasons, even though you get why he might not want his son to date somebody that works in a gambling establishment. But then before that, in that same conversation, not a separate scene, he doesn't need the time to come to terms. In the same scene, he basically comes to the realization, well, if my son likes her, she must be special. I should meet her. Yeah. I really, really loved that. Like, let's have Marta to dinner. So great, right?
Yeah.
Super dad.
And if we're going to shoehorn a scene in, I was fine with that little piece of color.
Was it shoehorned in?
I don't know if it's shoehorn. I shouldn't say shoehorn, but kind of going a different direction than, it wasn't an A or B or C plot or whatever.
I will admit it doesn't really fit with the main plot super well, but I mean, anytime we get a little of Ben and Jake, I love it.
That's what I enjoyed Jake more than I thought I would from episode 1. And not that I didn't like him then. I was just like, okay, he's the kid.
He's not a Wesley. He's not a Wesley.
Yeah, I enjoy him a lot.
Yeah, and not to insult Wesley Crusher because he has his own things I like. I never found him as annoying as people say he is. Yeah. But I do see a bit where people can find him annoying, whereas Jake is not that.
Yeah.
Part of that is the father-son relationship. Like, he really is a really good father.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway. Dax talks about Jadzia as a separate person. Like, Jadzia went through this initiate training. Jadzia did this. And then I as Jadzia Dax, am a separate person, which I appreciated all that. But then, like, so other people refer to her as, oh, no, you're Jadzia. You're Jadzia Dax, and Jadzia is Jadzia Dax. And she doesn't correct or bat an eye. And maybe that's just how cool she is with things. But to me, it's like, well, she's going out of her way to establish this individual as a separate person. Why are you being a jerk and not referring to her as such? Like, when you're not using the pronoun somebody asked you to use, right?
Yeah.
My last note is finding out that Jadzia requested the Dax symbiote after Curzon kicked her out of the program and that Curzon granted it. Whew, I liked that a lot. I thought that was a really cool bit of backstory to round it out.
Whenever Dax is in a runabout, good conversations happen. I enjoy that.
I would say whenever Dax's mouth is open, good conversations.
This is true. I actually like the effects of when they were going to the wormhole or the other world. It was like, okay, this is kind of 90s, but kind of future, just different.
Sure.
So whatever, I just thought it looked different, which I appreciated. This is kind of backing up a little bit, but and it might be more of a series commentary than this specific episode, but this is just about the stingers. I'm really sorry Keith isn't here for this, but we talked about TNG hits them pretty hard. TOS really would hit them hard, but I feel like this is more of a 90s thing vibe, kind of like the stingers before we go to commercial on Deep Space Nine. You're just kind of like, a quick little synthesizer hit, not a major like dun-dun-dun. It's more like a dun-dun. So I actually kind of enjoy that. And also it just tells me, okay, this is where the commercial came in, rather than, oh, you need to really pay attention. Obviously we're watching it. I'm watching on Paramount Plus, so I know there aren't commercials coming, but still, it's like, okay, Act 2 or Act 3 or whatever's coming. So kudos to the choices made there. And now, and my last note to bring it full circle, I loved it when she said, and then when Cisco said, you are Dax. And at the end, I love when Dax says, I'm not Curzon. And the very last line. So I enjoyed that too. So I like that as kind of, Dax kind of went through an arc too. I don't feel like I don't know, either of their arcs are earned, but I still enjoy where they end up getting, she's not Curzon and Arjun's kind of like, okay, I think I figured out what I want to do. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I liked that aspect of the episode. My alternate episode is just like, let's just do a whole episode of Jake dating the Dabba girl and how his father reacts and meets her. I just wanted more of that. I guess every time we see Jake and Ben actually bond, I want a little more.
Yeah.
And then my other alternate episode is essentially, you remember that movie Mouse Hunt with Nathan Lane?
Yeah.
So that with O'Brien and Kira and the Bulls.
After the Bulls.
Yeah. With them especially with O'Brien at the center of him constantly failing and them getting the one up on him would have been really funny.
Mine, I thought you were going here, but no. Just the point of view of the proto-civilization. I want to see what that civilization is, which, whatever. I guess I could pick out any episode of Rick and Morty because I'm doing a watch of Rick and Morty lately. It just made me think of all the little other worlds they make on those episodes. That show.
Who was your shady character this week?
I kind of already touched on this, but it's going to be Kira just because I just thought she was written. I don't know if shady's the right word. Maybe annoying, but I have Arjun there. Just her kill everything kind of thing. I just, maybe it's the writer that is shady, but.
Could be. I mean, I have to go with the Cardassian we didn't talk about, Gol Evek, played by Richard, known for the Peacemaker Transamerica, Burn After Reading. And he actually played Gol Evek in 2 episodes. Oh, no, he hasn't yet. He will play the same character, Gol Evek, in 2 episodes of TNG. Next week's episode, Journey's End. Or no, that's in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, Journey's End, and then Preemptive Strike. So in these last 7 episodes of TNG, he's going to pop up twice again as the same character.
Interesting.
I don't know that matters that it's the same character. He will play this character in 2 more episodes of DS9 this season as well. So for whatever reason, they brought this character in to do 5 episodes at the end of these seasons of Next Gen DS9, and we never see him again. Don't know what the significance about it being, or they just got him one day to come in and do a bunch of scenes on a call. He also plays the same character in 1 episode of Voyager. It's the pilot of Voyager before they get lost. So that's really interesting. He plays the same Cardassian in 6 episodes of Star Trek across 3 series because I don't remember that character at all, and I don't think he gets developed at all. So good for him getting that. But I call him my shady because they call him for help, and he's just like, your station, your problem. I'm not dealing with it. And I feel like he probably knows real easy how to get rid of him, but chooses not to.
And I just like the idea of rats being on Deep Space Nine because I feel like we've talked about it before. I just like it feels lived in, and and it makes sense, from the idea of ships visiting and rats. That's how rats get around.
Completely, and they are definitely rats, if nothing else. Who was your annoyance this week?
It was Arjun. Like I said, I thought he came around, and I enjoyed that actor very much. But I thought, he was just whiny, and I still am whiny, but I was whiny then too. But still, I was probably annoying. So Arjun is my annoying.
Oh, absolutely, completely agree. For lots of reasons, he just was too annoying. Who you having a drink with?
I started with the obvious choice, Marta, but then
you never even saw Marta.
I know. This is interesting.
Well, if she's into a 13-year-old boy, she's going to have a drink with me.
She is trying to better herself by learning entomology. But I changed to Trejak, our guy, which, similar to last week, tell me everything. Or maybe I'll Galeko Malaga wrestle him.
Okay. I went with Dax, second week in a row, second DS9 episode in a row for me.
Yeah,
we're what, how many episodes are we into this
17.
season? 17, and I've already chosen Dax 6 times.
Oh, wow.
But she's just,
nothing wrong with it.
I know, I feel a little bit bad about that, but it really is she's really awesome in this episode. I just want to hang out with her. She seems like she'd be so much fun to hang out with.
Yeah.
Seems like she'd be a good buddy, a good friend that is real and sympathetic to you, but also can have fun. So, gonna go with Dax. Ranking the episode, I know it's far from perfect, but I feel like we should start at least in the middle.
Okay.
Let's go with the other Dax episode this season, Invasive Procedures, where the troll gets stolen, the symbiote gets stolen from her.
Oh yeah.
I'm okay with going below it, honestly.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's close though. I know I didn't love that episode either, but
I liked that episode, and I
There's
liked
good
this
stuff
episode.
going on.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I liked both of these, but they're not gonna
Kinda
like
love
be
them,
at the
right? So
Yeah. Well, that's Rules of Acquisition with the female Ferengi disguising herself as a male.
oh yeah. I think I'd go below that too.
Yeah, that's fair. The below that is the Armageddon game.
I think I might go above that one.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so we're gonna put it there.
Yeah.
We've been remarkably in agreement tonight. I love it.
Hey.
Next week, Star Trek: The Next Generation Genesis. When a new torpedo guidance system malfunctions, Picard and Data go chasing after it in an asteroid field, while the crew is left behind to deal with their own strange behaviors. So it sounds like disaster happens on the ship, but Picard and Data escape it, so they have to come back and fix it.
Of course.
I do see we're going to get Barclay. I do see we're going to get Ogawa. I do see we're going to get Spot.
Okay.
So all of those things make me happy.
Yeah.
But until then, live long.
And I hope you pass the audition and prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's got the time?